be totally honest, it's been a rough week.
One little bite led to two, which led to like literally the entire cake.
I got this cash shit burning a hole in my pocket, and I got
A bottle of single malt whiskey in my damn hand.
Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous.
so I have a lot of addiction issues.
You're a freaking psychopath.
Let's first discuss your schooling and your education when it comes to acting. Maybe you can briefly describe your journey to the whole acting education system.
Sure. So I actually grew up on stage. So my first foray into any sort of acting was when I did musical theater when I was 5 years old. My first official class was ballet. 3 years old. Imagine a wood sprite dancing across the stage. So I learned sort of like that stage presence, I think, from a really young age, just kind of knowing how to command a room. Like, okay, people are watching me. I have to do something interesting. I want to tell a story, and then that continued into middle school. I was a lead in all the plays. I was producing plays. High school, same thing. I was the president of the drama club. I was in every show. And then all this time, what's really interesting is I didn't realize I could go to school for acting. I thought, okay, when college comes, I'm going to have to be a marketing major or a communications major, something in the same realm.
Right.
And my dad sat me down and he said, no, you can go to school for theater. You can even get a master's in it. And it was like my world I was shook. And so I ended up going to Chapman University. I got my BFA in theater, which is where I actually met Leah McKendrick, who wrote the film Liza Anonymous that is going to Tribeca that we're talking about today. So we actually went to college together and we got a very amazing, diverse training there in the fact that they taught us everything from Suzuki to Stanislavski to Meisner to, they really said, here's a toolbox and you get to choose what you want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about this. Of course, you met the director of this film, of course, and then, but tell us about the audition. That kind of because you play multiple roles in this film.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can describe how that audition went.
Yes. Okay. So here is the kicker, Fernando, and this is a surprise. The role was written for me, actually.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even have to audition. So, Leah, my dear friend, after we've been friends for many years, she's been mostly based in Los Angeles. I've been mostly based in New York. And, she knew I was doing all these plays and all these readings and workshops and off-Broadway things. And, I said, I really want to sink my teeth into something a little deeper. And she was like, oh, I'll just write you something. And so she kind of gave me the film as a gift.
Right.
And then I took it and produced it and starred in it. And here we are. So luckily I didn't have to go through the nerve-wracking process of auditioning for this one.
So getting back to the point of you were talking about being in New York and being in LA. So you're from LA, you moved over to New York.
Mm-hmm.
You spent 13 years there.
Yes.
So tell us about that transition first before we get into Liza Anonymous a little bit further. But tell us about that transition first. And what are some of the keys in order to, become sustainable in the industry or become successful in the industry?
Oh, I love that question. It's, so I started out here in Southern California and I was not in LA proper. So I was in the surrounding area, which is where I went to Chapman in Orange. And then I moved to New York for a program called Springboard NYC. And luckily, talking about like sustainability in your career, luckily it was a program that really fostered young artists to say, hey, this is what it's actually like in New York. They had real estate agents come in and talk to us. Then they also had casting directors and musical theater directors and people work on monologues with us. But it was really just across the board amazing program. And then I just stayed. I stayed in New York, and I really grew up in New York because I moved there when I was 21 years old, and 21, and so I think in New York City, the big thing that I learned for that city specifically is it will embrace you if you embrace it. It's like you have to let this sit, you have to go with the flow of the city, or else it will fight you. Like it just will. It has its own will, you know? And so, yes, so I really learned also just like setting healthy boundaries. I think that's a huge long-term career success tip, is being able to say, I can't do this project right now. I have to say no, and not have FOMO, like fear of missing out, you know, being like, no, I'm exactly where I should be. And then moving back to Los Angeles, like I said, this is my first time in LA proper, even though I grew up a California girl. So I'm learning about the business here through sort of the COVID lens, because I moved here in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
But what I found is that, I mean, LA and New York is not too different in the way that you got to embrace the city. You got to find the heartbeat of the city and go with the flow. But I'm finding that the people are really wonderful on both coasts in the industry. And then if you find someone who's not, and you get rejected or you get hurt, which happens a lot as actors, that's where you set the boundary. You go, okay, I'm not going to let myself go down that path, or, you know, that you let it go. That was not the one for me. Because we have to remember there's a bunch of artists and we're all in it together. So we have to share and collaborate. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
That's where you developed sort of like a thick skin
Oh,
for those, you know, the rejections and the no's and the non-replies and stuff, which is, I believe, very important when it comes to the up-and-coming actors and actresses who, you know,
yes.
dreaming big and such. But tell us a little bit maybe about that thick skin that you developed for yourself.
Absolutely. So I would say lucky enough to develop a thick skin from a young age. So when I was doing musical theater, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, it's like one season I would get a lead role and it would be great. And the next season I wouldn't. And so I vividly remember coming home when I was just about 11 and I didn't get the lead in Charlotte's Web. And I ran up to my loft bed and I was just sobbing. And it was a thing of learning, of just learning. And my parents, they were so amazing. They were like, hey, so this is how it goes. Like, you're in a business with a lot of people. And so just keep going. And so I think the community is the thing that keeps everyone going. And writing and working on your own projects, you know, getting to say, okay, right now, obviously that casting director has called me in 10 times. I've had 10 callbacks, but I'm not booking. So in the meantime, I'm going to write something, or I'm going to produce something. I'm going to make my own work and scratch your creative itch, you know?
Yeah. So let's get back to Liza Anonymous. You play a character, you play multiple roles in this short film. But tell us how you resonate, maybe perhaps with one of the characters.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think Liza herself, as she is the through line, she is underneath all of those different personas she has. I think the Liza, and I don't want to give this away to anyone watching. So there is a version of Liza we see that I resonate with the most. And I think that it's the one that she just wants to be loved and accepted. And I think that it's a universal human need. So I personally, Danielle, want to be loved and accepted. I would guess you do too, Fernando. But we go about getting that need filled in a different way. In this story, Liza happens to go very far, very extreme. And it sort of begs the question, like, how far would you go? And also, I'm curious to know, how did she get there? What led to this choice? And so it's a short film, we only had 12 minutes to do it. But yeah, so it's kind of like all this intrigue, like what gets a person to be here and pretend to be someone else in multiple scenarios. But yeah, I think it's pretty universal what she's going through. It just looks different.
So this film is led by a women, it's a women-led team.
Yes.
So describe that feeling, and then describe your sort of outlook towards the future of the industry with sort of projects such as this.
Yeah, I honestly, we wanted to be very intentional about having a woman-led team. And the good news was it wasn't hard because more and more women are stepping into the film industry. And even if you look back like 10 years ago, if you wanted to find a solid woman DP, it would be hard to find because they would all be booked. They'd all be working. And so now we are having just more people of all genders coming in and saying like, okay, I'm feeling like I can learn. I'm feeling, whether that's starting as a PA and then working your way up or whatever that looks like. And so I'm really hopeful for us to get to a place where it's the norm on big productions from like, Marvelous Miss Maisel to like, High on the Hog, which is like an amazing new Netflix show I've been watching. Just in all different genres to say, oh wow, our crew just happens to be 50% women. Cool. And that can just be the norm. And that's what I'm hoping for. I think we're getting there.
For those who are trying to step up and making their own production company, what are some sort of advice that you would give to the up and coming production companies? Because I'm pretty sure it's not an easy road.
Oh yes, it is not an easy road. I think one thing, so my husband and I started Brooklyn Quarter. We started it in Brooklyn, but we're keeping the name after we moved to LA. So, and the idea is kind of to be like the Brooklyn Quarter, like the French Quarter, the Latin Quarter, like, the area, like the hangout. And I think when we started, we quickly realized just because we started a thing didn't mean that we knew everything. So going, okay, it's like having this healthy balance of learning from the thing that you're making and learning as you go along. And I don't know, just letting yourself learn and letting yourself be like, oh, okay, I have to research live streaming now because I didn't know that this was the way my show was going to go. And so specifically at Brooklyn Quarter, we started out just wanting to actually keep a group of our friends together. A lot of people were, one of our friends has a kid, another one was getting married. Some people were moving out of different areas. And we wanted to keep everyone together. So we started running a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And we then turned that into a show. And now we've had multiple tabletop web series shows under the guise of Dungeons and Dragons. We have written an entire original world. My husband has over 250 pages he's written. But it's devised storytelling. And so it's a really communal thing. And we did over 150 episodes combined of all of our shows. So that's how it started. And then, we've done other web series and we've done a talk show. But when Liza Anonymous popped up, we just threw ourselves into it. Like, okay, this can be a Brooklyn Quarter production. Like, let's do something else. And that's a part of the learning. That was a part of the learning curve. And because I executive produced it and produced it, along the way, there were moments for me where I was being taught things in the moment by the editor or the director or our sound designer, being like, oh yeah, this is how this goes in this part of post-production. And now I have all my notes and I feel confident. So for next time, when my next movie comes. So, but yeah, Brooklyn Quarter, we're really excited. We're going to be launching a new show actually in the fall. So we're getting the cast together for that. We're very excited.
So yeah, so tell us what, I know this pandemic has really, made a lot of people struggle in the industry, of course. But if there's one thing that has come out of this pandemic that is positive, what do you think that is? And yeah, tell us about that.
Sure. I think that although we lost a lot, right? There was a lot of loss and grief in many different ways. Not only losing loved ones, which is the hardest, but, high schoolers not being able to graduate, college students not being able to graduate. I had my wedding 1 year ago and we did a virtual elopement. We had to cancel the whole party.
Oh, wow.
And so grief and loss in this communal way, I think, is a big thing that we're taking from that. But the beautiful thing that I've seen is because we've been forced into these Zoom rooms, we've been able to connect with people we would have never connected with normally.
Right.
And so it creates a new kind of empathy, to be in a fly on the wall in certain conversations and webinars or self-help things or artistic things or acting classes in a new way where you're on a computer screen. So it's go time, like it's just you in your room and here you go. And so although it's been very difficult, I think that we're coming out of it going like, oh, wow, look at what we've done. And so I would hope that more empathy was created. I was in an amazing group with some women in like Virginia Beach and Maryland and people I never would have spoken to normally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one beautiful thing I've gleaned from this crazy last year.
Yes. So now you're gonna be at Tribeca Film Festival with this short film, Liza Anonymous. So tell us how you feel about what you're feeling right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm beaming. It's our dream festival. It really is. And so we're just so humbled. We're so excited. We're so grateful to open our film here, and that it's just the beginning of our festival journey is just, yeah, it's an absolute dream. So we are ready. I think it's one of, if not the first festival back in person.
Yeah, it is.
Of this scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So,
crazy.
Yeah. I'm flying out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Danielle, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for answering all our questions. And of course, the best of luck to you with Brooklyn Quarter, and of course, Liza Anonymous.
Thank you so much, Fernando. This was lovely.
Thank you.